Alright, welcome back everybody. In this video we're going to look at how we find rates of change from graphs. We're just going to look at a couple of examples and we'll talk you through some of the key components. Here's the first example. It says the graph below shows the number of assignments that a Keystone Math student had completed, which is our y variable, after a certain number of days of school, which is our x variable. We're going to try and find the rate of change shown in the graph below. Okay. So what we want to do when we're doing this is we want to pick any 2 points that we can clearly read off of our graph grid, and we're going to identify the slope between those 2 points by using the concept of rise over run. So I can pick any 2 points that are on the graph. I'm going to pick this one right here. I can clearly tell there's a point there, and I'll pick this one right here. And it doesn't matter which 2 you pick, as long as they are clearly points that are on the graph grid that we can clearly read their coordinates in order to identify what's going on. Okay, now, as I look at this, I'm looking for the rise over the run. So I go ahead and I count up from one point to the next, and it rises 4 units as it goes from the first point I chose to the second point I chose on this graph. And it goes over to the right 2 units. And so the rise over run is 4 over 2. Now, something that we want to be careful of when we're doing this is we want to make sure that we're paying attention to the scales on the graph. Each block on this graph grid stands for 1 unit, and so I could just count the rise over run like that, and it's going to give me the exact value that I want. But some graphs will not be that way, and we'll see that in the second example. Now, all I want to do after this is simplify my rate of change and identify the units. So 4 over 2 is going to give me 2 for my rate of change, and then the y unit is assignments completed, so this is going to be 2 assignments per my x variable, day. So this Keystone Math student completed 2 assignments per day working on the course. Okay? And every time we have a rate of change, our unit is going to be some kind of fraction like this. Something per something. It's always going to be the y variable per the x variable as our unit. So in this case, we used assignments per day as our unit. All right, let's go over to the next example. The graph below shows the amount of gas in your car's gas tank and the distance in miles that you drove your car. What is the rate of change in the amount of gas in the tank? And so again, I want to clearly identify 2 points on my grid to use to calculate this rate of change. I'm going to use this point right here, and I also see that this point right here, it goes directly through an intersection point on the grid. So I'm going to use those 2 points. Now, it would be a big mistake to look at this and just count blocks to get the rise over run, because each block in this graph stands for something other than a single unit. And so when I count down here, my rise, I'm actually going to have a negative rise since the graph goes down. When I count down 4 blocks. But each of those blocks is worth 2 gallons. So the total amount that I went down, I can use the coordinates to identify that. I went from 16 to 8. And so my rise is going to be negative 8. And then for my run, I go over 5 blocks to the right. But each of those blocks stands for 30 miles. Okay, so I can either take 5 times 30, or I can look at the difference between the 2 coordinates on my scale here and find out that it's run 150 units. Okay, now I want to reduce this. I can take a 2 out of both the numerator and the denominator, and I get negative 4 over 75. And now I need my units for my rate of change. Okay, it's going to be the Y unit, gallons per mile. And so your car's using gas at a rate of -4/75 gallons per mile. And that's how we identify the rate of change from this graph. All right, that concludes this video on finding rate of change from graphs. We highlighted some of the important characteristics. Please make sure you're paying attention to the scales on your graph when you do this, and hopefully that will help you to be more successful. All right, have a great day. See you next time.